In this video, the Kythera throws almost every issue it can have at me, including issues regarding the Sear, the disconnector, loose fitment of the engine itself, the airline, trigger and Sear alignment with the trigger. I haven't included everything I did for the sake of time, but the main stuff is all in here. Just a little warning, there will be a lot of Kythera dry fires in this video, which are pretty loud. So basically, I'm going to rip this gun apart. I'm going to show you this one time and not go into any detail, because if you have a Kythera, you should be able to get inside your gearbox. And I do this about 8 times total in this session. It took me about 3.5 hours of tech in here to get this thing dialed in. Learned a lot, absolutely, but this stuff is pretty simple. So we're just going to rip it open. We're going to start investigating from there. So right away, opening this up, I send my buddy a text and I say, all right, I figured out what the issue is. Your airline's at a 90-degree kink. You'll be able to get a couple shots out of that. But as soon as you start to shoot really quickly, not enough air will get in there to reset it fully and it won't fire. So here I'm testing it, and the Sear and disconnector seem to be set up properly. It's setting and firing properly. So I pop the shim out, reinforce that airline with a little piece of a pen, electrical tape to it so it can't kink. Cut it about 1/2 inch shorter as well. Put the trigger back in, throw the gearbox back together. Give it a test fire. Shooting okay when I cock it and fire it. So I'm giving you a little zoom in look here at the trigger connection there with the Sear, the gap that can be adjusted with the speed trigger. Just be careful not to overdo that. And here I'm showing you a little Polarstar hack. You can actually get that in there to adjust that over travel screw with the gearbox intact. So I'm going to throw that back inside. Big pop to get that in there. Can be a little tricky with the max trigger and some of these lowers to get it in, but they usually fit. So a couple test fires. Everything seems to be working okay, so I'm pretty well committed to this setup right now. In my head, I think it's dialed, and boy, oh boy, was I mistaken. Throw the tank on here. Give it some shots. Firing okay. So as you can hear, it's just clicking. There's nothing happening here. And the sad part of this story is, if I had have known what I know now at this second, I could have saved myself maybe three gearbox openings. But we'll get into that later, what the real issue was in the very first place. Shooting fine. Now we're having a disconnector issue. Whenever you hear a bit of like a raspberry farting sound coming out of your engine, that's going to be your disconnector. It is not engaging enough. The worst case of this is your gun or Kythera just shooting basically full auto with air. So I went in, did some adjustments, set the air rig back up again, and the disconnector is still not adjusted properly. Like I said, if it's shooting like that raspberry or full auto, that's your disconnector. So what we're gonna do is tighten that up and engage the disconnector more. If you're getting nothing like you see here, when you squeeze, nothing happens. When you go to push in the nozzle, nothing happens. This is a Sear issue. So what I'm gonna do is back that Sear off a little bit, and we're gonna go from there. Okay, it's firing great now after I gave the disconnector about a full turn inward. So here we go, committed to this. Let's put it back all together. We're zinging it out like a NASCAR pit crew. Okay, let's test it. Nothing. So guys, I know what this issue is now. I'll give you a little spoiler alert. When it's not firing at all, it's firing fine, then not firing at all. Your trigger isn't actually hitting the Sear at all, or that whole trigger unit there. It's just off to the side a little bit. So the issue is actually alignment with the trigger and the Sear. At this point, I'm figuring it out. As you can see, when I twist the engine to the one side, it shoots perfectly, flawlessly. So as you can see, my tape job there is pulling the engine to the side, locked in place. Very strategically taped there, and it's shooting absolutely perfect now. So what the tape's doing is basically what my hand was doing in that video, which was keeping the engine pulled in towards that trigger. And finally, it's dialed. I'm happy with it. No issues. Dumped a couple mags out of it to really test it. Running this puppy up with 130 PSI. So I hope everyone can learn a lot from this video. I sure did throughout this experience. It was about 3.5 hours of work. We experienced issues with the Sear, the disconnector, loose fitment, the airline, and the trigger and seal alignment. So guys, reference this video.